Hi everyone, welcome back to the Movie Reviewers 100 here on YouTube and of course on Facebook as well if you're watching on YouTube. Link to our Facebook page is below. We're doing Jake Gyllenhaal this week. I'm wrapping up the week and I'm talking about Brokeback Mountain, which was one of two films that he starred in 2005. The other one being Jarhead for Sam Mendes. So, a lot's been said about this movie, Brokeback Mountain, a lot. First of all, it's a generally very well-made movie. If I have an issue with this movie, it's the time factor. There seems to be these great leaps in time. It takes place over the course of 20 years or more. Yeah, the jumps in time are very sudden. And although the actors wear some makeup to make them look older, it's not all that convincing. They don't seem to change that much. So suddenly Heath Ledger's daughter shows up and she's a grown woman about to get married. It's just like, well, when did this happen? How much time has passed now? A lot. This is based on a short story. Was adapted for the screen and then directed by Ang Lee, who won the Oscar for Best Director that year. He later on won another Best Director Oscar for Life of Pi. Heath Ledger co-stars with Jake as the other half of the couple in question. Heath Ledger's also met Michelle Williams during the shooting of this movie. They ended up having a relationship for many years. They had a little daughter. Of course, he passed away right before The Dark Knight came out. So we're not going to be seeing any more films from him, obviously. Jake and Michelle Williams and Heath were all nominated for Oscars. None of them won, however. And it was nominated for Best Picture as well. I think the only other award it won is for score. Might have been nominated for cinematography. I'm not sure if it won, of course. Other people in this movie include Randy Quaid. Anne Hathaway plays the woman who Jake Gyllenhaal eventually marries. Then you have, popping from small roles, Kate Mara plays Heath Ledger's grown daughter, and Linda Cardellini also plays a key part in it as well. Obviously, the subject matter puts some people off. And in fact, when this movie was being made, when it was announced that it was being made, people, journalists in particular, would joke about the whole premise of the movie, that it's about a couple of cowboys who fall in love with each other and have a secret affair over the course of many years, and they're just like, whatever, right? But I read about how some of these journalists actually came up to the makers of the film after screening it and apologizing for being so cavalier about it. Like, we really didn't take this movie seriously, and it deserves to be taken seriously. It's an uncomfortable subject for a lot of people, I'm sure, and I am certainly one of those people some of the times. I like to consider myself open-minded. I like to think that I'm a compassionate person and empathetic. Recently I reviewed Behind the Candelabra, which was a Soderbergh film that he made for HBO, in which Michael Douglas plays Liberace and Matt Damon plays his boyfriend. And there was a lot more sex in that movie between those two men than there was in this movie. There's like one sex scene in this movie between the two of them and maybe two big kissing scenes. That's about it. Still, it's not something that's easy for some people to talk about. And with Behind the Candelabra, I really kind of stammered my way through that review just because it's so difficult to just... It wasn't just the fact that it was about two men in a sexual relationship. It was also the whole look of everything, the gaudiness of it, and the gross makeup after they'd gotten their plastic surgery and everything like that. It just, a lot of it really put me off. This one, not so much. I think the lack of prosthetic makeup maybe helped with that. But I think I would have preferred them to focus on a shorter span of time, maybe like 5 years, rather than 20 years or whatever, because it just isn't quite believable in that sense. But again, being a hetero dude, I tend to sort of occupy a majority group most of the time. I'm a Caucasian, English-speaking, straight American male, and that puts me in a sort of majority group a lot of the time. I'm not a member of many minority groups, hardly any, unless you count nearsightedness and left-handedness. Those are my minority groups I belong to, and maybe people who aren't sports fans. They're maybe a minority group as well. It's here I go stammering again. See what I mean? I don't know what to say about it exactly. The movie is excellent for the most part. You know, the acting's all really good. I've been a fan of Michelle Williams for a long time, so I was really pleased to see her in that movie. And I was excited for the movie just because it was like something mainstream and high profile that normally just sort of gets pushed into a separate section of the DVD store and the art house theaters. Aren't many same-sex or same-gender, if you prefer, relationship stories. Gay characters are oftentimes simply supporting characters, maybe not always with a partner, maybe just by themselves, as a friend to one of the main characters. I'm kind of surprised that there haven't been more romantic comedies involving lesbian couples, because the cliche, I think, being that romantic comedies appeal more to women, so maybe they might like romantic comedies without the men in it. They might accept a same-sex romantic comedy if there's just two women in it. But again, we're talking about major studios that are backed by large corporations that want investments that they know that they have a better chance of getting return on. And I think that the same-sex relationship films, be them comedies, dramas, whatever, get a hard time support in areas of the country and the world where that kind of thing is at the very least frowned upon and at the most outright banned, like they are in Russia and Nigeria. And Jamaica's very homophobic country from what I've read. So this limits the box office prospects of films just dealing with this subject matter, which is a shame, really. You know, I think that if you know, there were more films made like this, and if more actors and actresses come out of the closet, as I know there's plenty of them who are secretly gay and lesbian that aren't saying so just because they don't want their public image to be damaged, especially with the overseas grosses, because they're very important to the major studios. So it remains a fringe subject, despite the fact that this movie got lots and lots of acclaim and was nominated for all kinds of awards and is a very well-admired picture. There are still people that, you know, don't want to have anything to do with it and don't want to have anything to do with subject matter of this kind of prefer just go away and not even exist, which is a real shame, really, because if you think about the differences between gay people and straight people are relatively minute compared to all the kinds of other differences that exist between different kinds of people. It's really a much smaller thing. But since so many people are just uncomfortable with the idea of gay people and gay relationships and gay sex, to be specific, because it runs contrary to instincts, you know. You are watching a movie, you see a guy and a girl together in a romantic way. Those of us who are in the majority can relate to that, whereas if we see two guys with their arms around each other, there's this sort of knee-jerk reaction that I still have myself, despite my efforts to overcome that. You know, I live in Chicago, which is a big city with a very, very diverse population, and there are sections of the city which are heavily populated by gay people, or at least gay businesses. There tend to be a lot of restaurants, bars, theater, what have you, shops that sort of cater to that community. And that's what you get when you get a densely packed population. Whereas, you know, out in sort of the rural areas of the country, that thing is that kind of thing is much less visible. You know, despite the states that are approving same-sex marriage now at a civil level, you know, there's a lot of resistance all over with the, again, with the rural areas of the country and the very sort of church and conservative-based communities. Look no further than all this hubbub around Duck Dynasty. I mean, all that bullshit, you know, just goes to show that people just don't want to accept it. And it's really, really important, I think, that those of us in the majority, and I am one of the majority here, those of us in the majority that have grown up without having to be okay with the idea of people who are different from themselves, so be it religious, race, sexual orientation, whatever, that it's important that we make an effort to not just tolerate people who are different from ourselves or accept people who are different from ourselves, but to welcome people who are different from themselves. I mean, that's what America, this country, is supposed to be all about. We're supposed to be a whole bunch of different people from all over the world coming here because here is where life could be best for us. But in order to make that happen, it's got to be integrated completely with as many different kinds of people as possible, and not have people who are, you know, saying, well, I'm okay with this type of person, but not this other type of person over here, despite the fact that I don't even know anything about them as an individual, you know. I mean, we have these big communities and we have these big cities and, you know, groups of people, but they're all made up of individuals. Individuals have their own tastes, have their own ambitions, have their own relationships with people that they care very much about, and whether those be sexual or not, you know, isn't it better that we encourage those kinds of positive relationships versus the negative ones? I think it is. So, excuse my rant, if you could call it that. Anyway, the movie is pretty decent. You ought to check it out if you haven't. Jake Gyllenhaal, you know, is an actor who I like in a lot of stuff. You know, earlier this week we had a review of Source Code. That's a movie that I think is quite good. Really good science fiction movie. One of my favorites from that year. And Day After Tomorrow, not a really big fan of that movie, but I'm not going to fault the acting, certainly. What was the other one? What did Ray do? James did End of Watch, and Ray did something recently as well. What did he do? I just saw it earlier this morning. Sorry, Ray, I forgot which movie you did. Anyway, obviously you all know about this movie, and if you've decided, I hope you haven't shut this out of your life if you haven't seen it yet. I hope that you give it a chance, because it is worth your time. And maybe, just maybe, you know, if you're having trouble with the subject, or which is just the idea of relationships and people like this, it might help. But I really think that romantic comedies would go a long way, because this is, you know, more of a tragedy than anything. A friend of mine said, gee, I was hoping for more passion in this film. I'm like, well, this movie is more about the pain of being apart, because they have to keep the relationship secret from everybody. You know, the people just can't know about it. So yeah, it is dramatic and tragic, and maybe we need more comedies like In and Out. I don't know. That's the one with Kevin Kline and Tom Selleck. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Appreciate it. We've got a new theme starting tomorrow. If I'm not mistaken, it's Meryl Streep, one of the greatest actresses to ever walk around and breathe. So I'm really looking forward to looking at a couple films of hers and deciding which one I'm going to do. Thanks very much for watching. Please do check out the other guys' videos on Jake Gyllenhaal films if you haven't already. I appreciate you listening. Thanks very much. See you soon.